Hello and welcome back to another Flute Tip of the week. My voice is finally back. Very happy about this. However, I know that a lot of people, if I am in a busy room, will be able to hear everything I say. I'm currently back in Ottawa visiting my family for the holidays, and I am just loving that we have so much snow, but it's been pretty beautiful weather as well. Hi, Willow. Today we're going to be talking about note transitions, specifically concerning B flat. So let's jump right in and get familiar with those notes. When you are comfortable with all forms of fingering B flat, you will have good fluidity through every passage. This is important because growing up we are taught to initially start doing the long B flat, but then of course we end up using the thumb paddle for B flat, and a lot of the time we will kind of forget about the paddle B flat. And each of these has equal merit and use when it comes to doing different technical passages. And so it's important to learn how to transition between these so that you can have very fluid passages without hitting notes that do not quite coincide properly. For instance, with the high F sharp, we will run into the issue of intervals between B flat and G flat, or in other cases A sharp and F sharp. Because if you leave the thumb down for the B flat, it's going to mess up the tone for the F sharp. So instead of having our nice sound, we end up with something like this. And so this is a case where we need to learn how to use either the paddle or accurately use the long B flat. It is equally important to become comfortable sliding your thumb so that if you are in a situation where a long B flat or a paddle B flat will not really be comfortable, you're able to switch your thumb over quick enough to be able to do this seamlessly. I've mentioned it before, but I'm going to mention it again. I wrote a book of studies about 2 years ago for finger independence. 2 of these studies focus in particular on B flat, and one of them requires you to be comfortable and to gain control over sliding your thumb, so that it makes some passages a lot easier because you're able to trust what's going on with your thumb. And learning how to slide your fingers overall is going to be helpful. So for B flat to be natural, your sliding of the thumb will sound like this. Of course, it is not great for doing trill passages, but it is helpful if you are in a situation where a long B flat is a little bit too clunky, especially when you're going to be jumping up to the higher register. So instead of having to coordinate moving your index finger to your third finger, you can just slide your thumb. However, again, it is important to be able to be comfortable enough with the long B flat to be able to do it this way as well. And this kind of comfort can be attained just by doing chromatic scales, because this is the same kind of interval you're going to be using between F natural and F sharp in the first place. Another good thing to be comfortable with is switching your thumb over from the B flat to the B natural when you have notes that do not require the thumb in between. For instance, if you're playing in D flat major and you're going to be continuing on up to the G flat, you need to gain control over switching your thumb from the paddle to the B natural position when you are going over the C and the C sharp. So what it'll look like in your perspective is going from here up and then over. So this you can practice just by doing B flat, C, B natural, and in between switching your thumb over. This will help you get comfortable so that when you're going all the way up to an F sharp or G flat, you are going to know that you are capable of switching this over, especially if you're normally using the long B flat to be able to avoid this problem. Next, it's important that we get comfortable using paddle B flat. A lot of the time, people will neglect this key completely because we just assume that it's just as easy to do long B flat or thumb B flat without having to think about using the paddle as well, because 2 fingerings for the same note is already enough for some people to think about. But there are loads of places where a paddle B flat is actually going to be the best and simplest port of call. For example, if you are doing scales where you have a semitone between B flat and B natural, it will be easier to use the paddle B flat, because when you're doing quick scale passages, you sometimes run the risk of putting your right index finger down before you actually transition to B flat. And this changes the pitch of the note before it and will basically make everything sound less fluid and less in control. It's also really useful for scales in thirds. But also with scales in thirds, there will be times when it's easier to alternate between using the paddle B flat and the long B flat. And a lot of this will be due to having to stretch your index finger just that little bit farther than is comfortable with the note that you are playing. So for example, if I'm going to be playing something in F sharp major and I'm doing this in thirds, I will be alternating between the paddle and the long B flat. So first I will be using paddle and then long. And the reason why I do this is because I don't want to run the risk of accidentally lowering my right hand index finger before I switch from the F sharp, because obviously that'll just bring me down to F natural. But it's also more comfortable to use a long B flat after doing a B natural in most scenarios. Most of the reason why I think it's important to be able to have good control over all three of these fingerings is so that you are ready for any scenario that might come to you. So again, that tip was learn to use all three B flat fingerings so that no matter what passage you're doing, it will always be fluid. I hope you find this week's tip helpful. It's important to really know all the different capabilities and different alleys of possibility on the flute so that you're ready for any situation. And the B flat can affect so much in terms of color and fluidity in scale passages and such, so it's really important to know what all of your options are. I'll see you all next week. Flute happy, B flat happy, and happy holidays. This year it's much colder in Canada than the last few years, and I'm extremely happy about this. Look at all of this snow! Like, the park benches are starting to disappear.